Welcome to Dental Nachos TV, where our goal is to help you increase success, decrease stress, and most of all, reduce the number of times you feel like crying inside a day. My name is Paul, Dr. Nacho Goodman. You're going to see me and my amazing friend here in just a second. We're here with Joshua Scott of Studio 88, amazing friends and sponsors, talking about the $3 million startup. I am excited to hear this story. As we say, the story is the star, in Studio 88 does an amazing job bringing your story to life. They have done my Pennington Dental Center website. If you're watching, you can go to penningtondentalcenter.com and check out their amazing work. If one of the things I like to share before I bring up Josh is would like to be your FIP friend in your phone. The more friends we have, the better our lives are. So if you would like to take a screenshot of this or do the QR thing, that is my personal cell phone number. I'd like you to say, hey, I was watching the Studio 8 webinar in person, live or on demand. I would like to be your FIP because FIPs help us solve problems. We can share, we can care more. You may need someone to solve a problem for you. I may need someone to solve a problem for me, and we can do that together. So I'd like to welcome to our Nacho On Demand CE stage, our Nacho On Demand TV stage, Dr. Joshua Scott. He is not a dentist, but he spends so much time with dentists. We can make him an honorary dentist. You could start your video, Josh, when you are ready. Unless there he is with his wall of books. I'm going to let him share his screen in just a second, but I know that many of you might be watching this at lunch, might be watching this when you have to go and pick up your kids. You might want to watch the recording later. So just text startup to 215-543-6454. Not only can you watch in on Josh's magic now, you can get the recording later. So Josh, thank you for being here with us. I'm super excited to hear about the $3 million startup. But before you get started, just orient our audience as to what you do in your daily life to help dentists survive, thrive, and not cry.
Yeah, Paul, thanks so much for being here, man. Love seeing you. Love the community. We just ran into each other a couple weeks ago here in my
Yeah,
hometown.
I know. I loved it. Ohio was great.
I know you were speaking for the Ohio Dental Association. We were down there, so always a good time. Studio 88 is dentistry's story-driven marketing agency, and I really set out years ago. Man, I'll tell you that the main impetus was I looked around and dental marketing just sucked. Like it did, especially 10 years ago. I feel like we made a lot of progress, but man, 11 years ago, it was a lot of stock images, very clinical, cold websites, direct mail with, whatever offer, whatever free stuff we could give away on direct mail. And I just felt like there should be a better way. Like dentistry is a beautiful story. Can we let's tell that story? And that's really what Studio 88 does.
I love that. I mean, at the Mark Costas Dental Success Summit years ago, it was Dr. Eric Cornelius. Mark said on stage that dentists are on an island, but Eric said it even better. Dentists are actually in a cave with their team. So bring these stories out of the cave so that we can share them with our community. I've also invented this, Josh, I know, but when you're a dentist, you often do some really great work and nobody cares. Nobody thanks you. Nobody says good job. So I say, just put up your hand and give yourself a selfie high five. And you are bringing to life a real selfie high five for us. I'll let you share your screen, but just give our audience kind of the why behind you wanting to share this story with us today.
Yeah, of course. This project of ours, I'll tell you how it started out. It was a $3 million startup project, and a dentist approached me and said, "Hey, have you ever taken a startup? We work with lots of startups, probably 25 startups this year. We're one of the leading startup agencies in the country." And so I had a dentist come up and say, "Hey, have you ever taken a startup from 0 to 3 million before in 1 year?" And I was like, "No, I've never done that. Like, I'm not even going to try to BS you or spin it or whatever." I was just like, "No, that's never happened." And he said, "You want to try?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so we started to go down this road of laying out a strategy, what it would take to scale a startup from 0 to 3 million in 12 months.
And before I turn over to you, Josh, just so people have context, this is wildly beyond norms, right? A startup, we work with Ideal Practices just like you. We had Stephen Trutt on our podcast the other day. They do an amazing job, but startups scaling to 3 million in 1 year, it's like the 4-minute mile, just to give people context.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to let you guys,
100%.
I'm going to let you sit back and relax and watch my good friend Joshua Scott, and I'll be back on at the end. Joshua, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, of course. And I appreciate you bringing that up because I always preface this with, this is abnormal. And I don't even advise this for most people. Like, I think this going from 0 to 3 million actually probably creates more problems than it's worth in that short time period. And so but it looks like cool and it looks sexy. And I remember Paul, you know this, when it was like the goal was, oh my gosh, can we get to $1 million as a practice? Like that was such a huge thing at a point in time. And even then for startups to kind of chase that elusive goal of, man, can I get there in the first year? Can I get to 1 million? And so we've broken through that. And we definitely know practices that have hit 2, but I'd never seen anybody, a GP practice anyway, hit 3 million in year 1. And so this became super interesting to us. And I know my team and I know our strategies, and I felt like they would scale to be able to fit that challenge. So this is Dr. Michael Pappas. He's the owner of Grove City Smiles, and this was his actual 3rd practice. His first 2 were acquisitions. He built them into bigger practices, like 16 ops, 18 ops, that type of thing. So when he got time to, when it came to his 3rd, he said, I think I want to try a startup, and built a ground up, bought land, built a ground up building, built a 16 op practice right from the start. And so he says, startup is hard. You have 1 impression on the community, you have 0 patients, and you're trying to change the perception of dentistry. And I remember because I was like, why do a startup now? Like, why not go back to acquisition? He was such a fan of them. He had some fear about going into a startup because, yeah, there's 0 revenue, there's 0 perception of you in the community, and so they're just harder. But this afternoon during this webinar, wherever you're watching, whenever you find yourself listening to this, we're basically going to walk through 3 keys. And so as we look back on this campaign, from a marketing standpoint, I feel like there were 3 very important keys that we basically pulled out from this that were like, okay, these were probably the most important points of being able to scale something like that. Now, again, I think if you're listening to this, you're watching this, here's where I'm at. This is not a conversation about scaling to 3 million. This is not a conversation about how big your ad spend should be, about how many ops you should have, about how many hygiene, this is a conversation about marketing principles that we put in play and then scaled that actually worked at a very, very large scale. My hope with this, the goal, and I think why this conversation is important, is at the end of it, you can walk away, I think, knowing I can control marketing. Like there's a lever there. And if I do it right, I actually have control over the growth of the practice. And I found for most owners, man, that is liberating. That just brings peace of mind. If you know, growth is one of those things, marketing is like, we don't feel like we ever got our hands on it. And I feel like at the end of this, if you have a little bit more grip, if you've got a little bit more handhold on it, and you're like, okay, I feel like there's some control here, that's really what I want. And whether you're trying to grow just organically yourself, add an associate, add a location, add a hygienist, add ops, add hours, dental practices are always expanding in lots of different ways. I think you can pull 1 or 2 principles at least from this to help you grow. So let's jump into it. Point number 1, the key takeaway here was to build an authentic brand. Build an authentic brand. And so Studio 88 and just me personally, this is kind of how I built the company and my life around this question of really like, what's the story? Grove City Smile. So step number 1 is before we launch and open the door, it's what's the story that's here? Why is this practice different? Why are you building this practice? What do you hope it does? What do you see it? How do you see it impacting this community? And we start to pull those values out and begin to tell that story. He said, we need to be able to build a brand that told the patient, maybe you haven't been to the dentist in a long time. We're here to help you. We're not here to judge. We're not going to scare you. We welcome everyone. And so our team distilled that down into a tagline that I love. It's smiles for everyone. And you'll see this on their website. You'll see this in the office, the shot here, smiles for everyone begins here. And you take something like that, it begins to tell the story. We're welcoming, we're hospitable, there's no judgment. We want you here. You made the right decision to be here. That's what that storyline begins to tell. And then you can play it out through all the pieces. Watch this.
If you truly are doing a startup, I have to believe that you have a vision, right? You have this internal feeling of why you're doing it, right? Why you don't want to buy something and you want to do it on your own. Going in, I didn't have the vision fully crafted. We knew kind of what that was, but we couldn't articulate it. And when we went through the process with your team, it came out and we're like, oh my gosh, like it was so simple. It was there right before our eyes, but we couldn't define it and you helped us define it. Through the questionnaires, through phone calls and then starting to get into it. And you guys pressed this a little bit like, hey, we got to define this in these ways. If you didn't do that, we wouldn't have done it ourselves. I mean, that's just the reality. We're good at a lot of things in discipline, but some of that was not on our radar.
Yeah. We love our startups for exactly that reason. I tell the team it's not just about marketing and dental practice. This is coming alongside an entrepreneur who has a vision, who has a dream, and helping them like visualize that, articulate that. And so we feel like that's part of our responsibility and our role in that process. And so taking that brand, that storyline, and integrating it throughout the physical location as well. We're talking about consistency, building that story through, whether it's the website and the logo, the physical practice, seeing it just in the interior. If we say, hey, smiles for everyone, and we want a welcoming environment, or we want to be welcoming, then the environment needs to reflect that, And this was a new build, and he worked with an interior designer to just figure out how to implement those elements throughout the physical space. And so the first step here is just defining and kind of hashing that out. What's the brand? What's the story? And sometimes it can take a minute. Don't get discouraged. If you're a startup, sometimes, this could be a 6-week, 8-week, 3-month kind of process. And if you're an existing practice, I'd encourage you to go back and maybe do some of this work. Like, what is it that makes us different? Why did we start this? Why should patients choose this practice here? So also part of that whole conversation about authentically building a brand is the digital experience. So we've got the actual in-person experience, and we've got the digital experience as well. 75% of users make judgments about a company's credibility based on visual design alone. This is a paper out of Stanford. We know this, and so it's like, unfortunately, here's the part of it is basically what this says is patients are going to make judgments about your clinical competence based on visual design. It's just going to happen. And I think in 2024, we just can't get around that anymore. This is like entry level to running a business is how do we visually communicate, but how do we communicate in like contemporary language? And the visual aesthetic part is a huge factor. 94% of users' first impressions of healthcare websites are design related. So it doesn't matter even what they're looking for, right? They go there and it's like, my first impression is this is a good doctor. This is a good clinic. This is a good, this whatever. So that they're looking for. This is the world that we live in. And I think instead of hating on it, instead of resisting it, we need to go to the other side and go, hey, design is a huge communication tool. It is. And so making sure that our digital presence reflects that. The website has a great user experience. It has a great user interface. These are things on the Studio 88 side that we pay attention to and we study and we build into. You look at a website and you're like, great, looks like a nice website. There's a lot of intention. There's a lot of psychology that goes into that in actually building out a user experience that patients find effortless, they find frictionless. Even just appointments online, chatting online, new patient forms online, that convenience factor stepping into play. And this is the online scheduling app there. But so number one is build an authentic brand, okay? Back up, start with that, or look at your brand in a fresh new way, work with a company that can reinterpret it. But that story piece, that connection piece is so huge to anything else that comes after this. Everything else I'm going to talk about from here on, the effectiveness goes down significantly if that digital experience is not awesome. It's not what it should be. Okay. All right. Number two, the advertising strategy was a key factor here. Just having an overall strategy that was comprehensive, but also assertive. We knew going into this that he wanted to cover all the bases. So this wasn't just about digital ads. This was about Dr. Pappas ran direct mail for 3 months right at the opening. A lot of people would say direct mail is dead. Some people still argue for it. I think if you're looking at a startup, it's still one of the best mediums to make an announcement to the community. And if you look at it like that, for him, it was less about getting new patients in the door necessarily, and more about making the announcement to the community and letting them know over a period of 3 months, hey, there's a new dental practice in town, and of course, we would love to see you. SEO was part of this, although that was a long-term plan. Reviews right from the start, generating those. And he wanted to come out and be assertive. He basically was like, I built this practice. I don't, we could do this over 3 years. I just don't want to wait. Like, why wait? Let's get it started now.
Walk me through like that strategy of going, okay, we want this practice to really take off from the start. What were some of those big marketing strategies?
We looked at it as like a subscription service. That's how we look at the new patient game. The quicker we get them into hygiene, the quicker we capture them, and we have recurring revenue over time.
Yeah.
So we were willing to go very aggressive early on
Yeah.
to obtain that patient. Then we looked at, okay, how do we get in front of them, right? Top of mind. So mailers, the digital, we do things in the community as well, right? Like it's kind of fun because I grew up playing sports, but like we got the football field,
Okay.
we got the baseball diamond, we sponsor like the high school baseball gala. So we do things in the community too. So it's a comprehensive approach. It's not just one thing, but digital definitely dominates the day.
You talk about hygiene as a subscription model, which I love, because the most valuable companies right now, I mean, they're SaaS products, they're subscription products, right? Investors want companies that have subscription because it's recurring revenue. I don't know that a lot of people look at dentistry like that. When did that kind of occur to you?
Practice 2, we started to realize it because in the first 2 practices, we really had to grow them, right? We had to obtain patients. It was hard, but once we had them, it was easy because we knew we had a good product. So we going into the startup, we're like, well, we can bleed for 3 years, or we can accelerate this thing, right? In the first 12 months, which ended up paying off, and it worked.
Yeah.
You know, it was a hypothesis that worked.
Yeah. No, I love it. And there's so much here, because I think when you shift your thinking like that, then the goal is get as many as possible, because you're starting those subscriptions. And you would see like a Netflix or a streaming service, right? Like at the beginning when they launch, it's Disney Plus. Get as many subscribers as possible, because you're kickstarting that subscription platform. So getting these new patients in, you're considering, okay, I'm going to spend X, but you're considering the lifetime kind of long-term ROI of a subscription model and leveraging that against it.
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole theory, and it works as long as you have a good product and you make the patient happy.
I love that, dentistry as a subscription model, and I don't know if that's something we've always necessarily thought of, and obviously that analogy it breaks down in some ways for sure. But looking at the business of dentistry is growing a subscription model, then we've watched companies like Netflix and Disney Plus and all those where it's just, hey, let's get as many subscribers in as possible from the start. Like, let's grow it as fast as we can, because then you begin to leverage that subscription, the coming back, the recare every 6 months, the staying involved in the practice now for years, referring other family and friends. All that begins to compound on top of each other. So the strategy was comprehensive, it was assertive. And then I want to jump into some of the digital ad campaigns. And I'll tell you here, if there was one key like takeaway where it was like, what was the reason they went from 0 to 3 million? I would point you right here, the digital ad campaigns. And so I'm going to kind of walk you through the overall strategy, the specific ad spends, what we were trying to do, the strategy there, what actually happens, and give you some real numbers. But first, let's look at this.
So we're talking about 40,000 per month, because sometimes even when I tell people this, they're like, "You're talking about like 40,000 overall?" I'm like, "No, it's 40,000 every month." So I think we started there officially. But give me like why, because that's a big number. Like, we're routinely talking to clients about 1,500 a month, and they're like, "Well, what's the return that I'm going to get for that?" Right? So you're starting at 40 grand. Like, that's a whole different mindset. Tell me about that.
So the way we built the practice is we truly can treat almost every patient, unless medically compromised. There's some cases we say no to, right? But we know, hey, we can harness this. So then it became this question of, all right, how does Google Ads work? It's simple. It's bidding. This is just, who has the bigger war chest?
Yeah.
To an extent,
Yeah.
right? So we knew like, hey, we could dominate digitally and block out a lot of other practices if we just went hard in the beginning, right? We want to be at the top of the page every single time because we have capacity. If we didn't, we wouldn't. But it works. It works. I'm, now everyone out there can just go and, employ this strategy, but I don't know if everyone also has the war chest to do it.
Or the guts to do it.
Oh yeah, because in the beginning, like it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Like you take losses, you take L's early on this, right? Like because you're spending the money, the patients are getting booked, even if they get booked right away, some of that treatment doesn't show up for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
But the snowball effect happens.
Yeah.
And then you start really harnessing the value of each patient that you've got, and it offsets the marketing costs. That's the thing. It's like, yeah, we spent 40 grand a month, but guess what? Like percentage wise, it's really low now, and we're very cash flow positive.
So we started off, and then I'll be the first one to kind of say, hey, look, 40,000 a month it's a big budget, right? And so when I started off early on, I said, what I don't want you to walk away with is, I don't have $40,000 to spend on marketing. I'm like, I got it. I literally get it. The majority of our clients are not in that position or need to make that type of investment every month. This is a unique situation. This is a startup, slamming on the gas and just accelerating. However, what we're going to watch here is what I call this creation of this formula that begins to shake out, that becomes very, very powerful when used. And so this is a graph of the total Google ad spend. So like I said, it started around 40. You'll see they launched in March of 2022. And it was somewhere around 16,000 because I think these ads started about halfway through March. Okay. And then April, it shoots up to, is actually about 53,000 in April. The reason for the dip there is all of a sudden he went, oh my gosh, we've got 130 patients booked before we even opened the doors. Okay. So he said, pull back the ad spend, and we took it back down to 30. At the same time, even before they opened, so to give you a little bit of background, he built this 16 op practice. He started it with 6 ops fully outfitted. I think it was 6 ops and 1 doc. And so when they got to 130 appointments scheduled before even opening, he said, pull back the ad spend. He actually then pulled the trigger on outfitting the next 5 ops to take it up to 11. So then you can see once he did that, once we got capacity back in July of 2022 with the additional 5 ops, the ad spend ramped up to that point, again, filled appointments. So we kind of leveled it off there. What we felt good about was about $45,000 a month is what we were spending. And then in December of that year leading up to it, he made the decision then, so about 7 months after opening, of outfitting the other 5 ops because we were just running out of capacity again. So then got the 16 op, got all 16 ops operational by December. You can see ramped the ad spend up again to about 60,000 at that point, its highest. Get those appointments, new patients in, get it filled, and then brought it back down into a what we called at the time a maintenance phase of 45,000 a month. Okay, total new patients from that. So you say, Josh, what did they get? Month 1 there in April, they were about 130, shot up to 200, 250. Again, and you can kind of see these peaks and how they correlated with opening capacity in the practice. We saw that it was July where the new ops went online. And then you can see just a couple months after, new patients begin to peak because they have the capacity. Same thing, the other 5 ops went live in December. 2 months later, in February, new patients peaked again. Okay. Cost per acquisition graph here. So this is one of the really interesting things as we began to track how much is it costing to actually acquire these patients. If we're spending $45,000 and we know how many new patients we're getting, what does that acquisition cost look like? And you can see opening $400 a patient. In the beginning, there's a lot of waste. You're getting digital ads dialed in. You're getting people used to answering the phones. They don't realize you're not open for another 4 weeks. Things like that, right? So it's driving up the cost of the new patient. One of the things we realized here in the first 30 days as well was that the phones, there were not enough people answering phones, and he immediately implemented online scheduling. He was hesitant about it. I was kind of fighting with him like, hey man, we're driving lots of people to the website. You need an easy way to schedule appointments. He felt like it would disrupt their systems, the front office systems, too much. But once implemented, it actually drove the cost way down. And you can see that plummet from April to May. That was the 2 biggest factors. having enough people to answer the phones, getting those staffed so we weren't missing calls. I think at that point it was they were missing 22% of calls, which is not bad for a practice. But again, you're spending so much money, like we want every call being answered. So we got the phones staffed better and implemented online scheduling. Those two things got that acquisition cost down. So we were averaging about $175 to $190 per patient. It's interesting because, you know, people are like, man, $45,000 a month is a lot. $50,000 a month is a lot. And I'm like, I know. If I said, hey, give me 600,000 and I'll give you back a $3 million practice, how many of us would take that deal? And look, doing that in 12 months, that causes me anxiety. So just saying that, like, I don't know that I would take that deal. You know, if you say, hey, give me 600 grand, I'll give you 3 million. I'm like, within 12 months, man, that's a lot. There's some trade-offs there, but it's that principle of Google should function like a formula. And that's really the power of it is not just throwing money at something, but having a very intelligent, sophisticated approach of if the acquisition cost of a patient is $200, then if we spend 2,000, we should be getting 10 patients, new patients in, right? Right. And there's some other metrics in there. If we're going to spend 2,000, we want to see how many click to the website. We want to see how many called, and we want to see how many become actual new patients. And then honestly, we want to see the revenue from those new patients. But in a simplistic world, if 2,000 gets you 10 patients, what do you need to spend to get 100? You need to spend 20,000. And if each patient is producing $1,100 average revenue, then it's $20,000 a big, scary investment to get 200 grand back. It's not. And we begin to take the subjectivity out of it. We begin to take the emotion out of it. And now we can actually employ a very powerful marketing tool. And then this was estimated new patient revenue from the new patients month by month as they're coming in. So you can see month one, yeah, you know, spent whatever that was for $40,000 in Google ads month one, but new patients produced 120. And then it just soared from there. And again, you can see the peaks there that correlate with the capacity.
So we just kind of looked at the practice. We're like, how many patients can we handle? And then we were like, okay, let's do the math on it. We know, hey, if it costs, we even like, we're pretty conservative. Like, hey, if it's $250 per patient, how many patients do we want? Let's figure out the budget on this. We backed out of all of that. And we're like, how many can we handle a day? You know, one hygienist, two hygienists, one doctor, another doctor, and we just kept ramping it from there.
So you just reversed engineered that. Take a conservative number, like what if we're going to spend $250 a patient and we need 100 patients a month? That's $25,000. That's real objective.
Yeah.
And that's just how you looked at it.
And then we track on the flip side, we track like, all right, we had this many patients. What did we produce off of that?
Yeah.
Right. To make sure that we're doing our side of it. Because if we're not able to treat those patients, then we got to go back to you guys and be like, look, these patients that came in off what we think were these ads, like we can't, there's no value there, right? Like, let's get rid of those ads and focus on this type of patient.
Yeah. Okay.
I love this just kind of approach. And I run into, you know, speaking almost, you know, monthly at different events and conferences, talking to potential clients on the phone, interacting with dentists. I hear all the time, Google ads don't work. And I think it's interesting because it all depends on how you use the tool that's in your hands. And most of the time, I would say Google ads don't work because either there's probably some common things there. We set them up ourselves, and in this day, you just can't do it anymore. It's too complex. You have to have an agency to execute that for you. We don't spend enough. You know, usually I say, well, you know, what was your budget? I was spending $500 a month. I was spending $1,000 a month. And to be honest, that's just not going to move the needle. It doesn't even open up the funnel to create enough traffic to actually even get conversions in most cities anymore. And I think it's really interesting. Like if you, it's almost like asking like, what's the value of a microphone? You know, value of a microphone in my hand is zero. I mean, if you gave me a microphone and it said, here, sing, I'm like, yeah, there's zero ROI from that. I mean, people might actually pay me money to like stop. You know, if it was karaoke and I'm up there and it might be, Josh, here's $20, just don't get up again. And so a microphone in my hand worth nothing. It's zero ROI. You put that microphone in the hands of Taylor Swift and that thing's worth $1 billion, right? This Eras tour was the first tour ever to gross over $1 billion in gross revenue. That's crazy. And Google ads are the same thing though. It's like, we can't just say because we tried it one time, it didn't work. It's one of the most powerful marketing tools that are out there today. This was also Facebook, Instagram, like meta campaigns that were running. So you can kind of see this chart. Again, this was impressions. Like we were running a campaign that was spending about 3,000 to 4,000 per month, just brand awareness. It wasn't really necessarily trying to convert new patients. It's just like, hey, we're in the community, just drawing attention to it, name recognition. But you can see every month they're getting 400,000 to 800,000 to over 1 million impressions on these platforms. So here's the ad spend. It ramped up to about 2,000 before they opened, peaked at about a little over 4,000, and then kind of was in that $3,600 to $3,800 range as they went. And here's something I'll show you is really interesting, right? So Facebook, Instagram clicks per month. I want to draw your attention to February of 2023. You'll see about 3,200 people clicked on those ads that took them to the website. So let me go back to this slide. How much did they spend? February 2023, they spent about $3,200 and they got about 3,200 clicks. That is crazy. And here's what I want you to think about. You spent $3,200 and 3,200 people walked in the front door of your digital experience, looked around and thought, this is cool. This looks like a cool dentist. And then they walked back out. If I told you they got 0 new patients from that, but I said, is this a good deal or a bad deal? You know, a lot of us, like, we're trained to judge marketing by whether or not it got new patients in the door, butts in the chair, right? I hear this all the time. It's a very short-sighted view of looking at marketing. If I said, hey, if you spent $3,200, I can get 3,200 visitors with that like have intention, because who wants to just click over to a dental site? Like they actually have some intention. They're curious. They want to see 3,200 people go over to your website, look around and go, wow, okay. They will come back. They will come back when they're ready. They will talk about you to friends. They will refer family members. These people will convert later. They won't tell you they saw that ad. They'll say, oh, I heard about you from a friend. I saw the location. But these are absolutely valuable visits to your website. So second point there, the overall advertising strategy. And then third point I want to make here is scaling and adjusting. And so obviously growing this big, you've got to adapt with the growth. I mean, he went from 6 ops because he was being a little conservative to then building out the next 5 right as they opened, to 7 months later, building out the next 5. The team went from 6 to 33. Hygiene went from 4 to 9. Doctors went from 2 to 5 over the course of that 12 months. Just even hiring and implementing, onboarding that team is challenging, and why I was like, I don't know that I would want to do this in 12 months, because that is a lot.
So give me the feeling in December of 2022 when you're realizing we're going to be at 2.2 for the end of the first 8 months.
Anxiety.
Okay.
So we were so overbooked, and we were trying to like expand hours, doing anything we can to get patients in. So we knew we just had this like massive influx of patients. We were trying to get team members and physical space. So we had just went from 5 to 10 ops in October of 2022.
Yeah.
And we started to build out the next 6 ops, and we're trying to like scramble to get that done as quick as possible. We're hitting delays. That didn't happen until March. So while it was awesome, the hardest part at that point was, how do we build the team and the space to meet the demand? Going into it, it was more like a demand problem, right? Like, are we going to have enough patients? What does this look like? Well, that wasn't the issue anymore. The issue was, can we scale quick enough to meet that demand? I mean, hiring enough team members to fill 16 ops in essentially 12 months is very difficult. Yeah. Building out that many ops and not having issues and maintaining the culture and the standard is a very, very difficult thing to actually execute on.
Yeah, yeah. It's also you realize you got a little lightning in a bottle happening.
You gotta harness it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that comes with its own set of issues,
Yeah.
right?
So Made campaign adjustments as we went. Basically, just like I said, creating this formula of, okay, what's the investment? How many clicks is that driving? How many calls are we getting into the practice? How many new patients is that creating? And then what's the revenue from those new patients? It gave us our acquisition costs. It gave us our ROI, return on investment for that. I'm going to skip this one. And then towards the end, with realizing the campaigns were fluid. So in the beginning, a lot of new patients just want to get them in the door. But as we realized, like, hygiene got to a point where hygiene was at capacity, but he was hiring new doctors to come in with the new ops going online. We invested into an emergency ad campaign. We invested into dental implants to more revenue producing services for doctors, knowing we had capacity in those areas. And so scaling and adjusting really became the third key of if hygiene's full, how do we create other capacity? If we need new patients, how do we get more ops, expand hours, all those things. And so the results from launch of April 2022 to March of 2023, so a full 12 months, the practice finished at 3.2 million in collections. This isn't a production number. This isn't a net production, gross production number. This is actual revenue collections from the practice. And the full calendar year, if we went from January of 2023 to December of last year, they finished at 5.4. And so I'll wrap up here with some closing observations of mine. Number one, $3 million is not the point. I hope you get that. Honestly, some of this in the beginning where I was talking about how the brand is so important, some of this might be you already have a marketing investment. It's just making it more efficient. It's converting at a higher rate because that brand is now engaging. Part of him getting that cost or that acquisition cost per new patient so low, like under $200, was because we knew the website was sticky. It was connecting. It was when patients were there, they were like, if there was any intention to schedule an appointment, they were going to do it. We made everything super easy. And so I think you could take away some of those efficiencies, what the brand does, some of that stuff, the Google formula. You don't have to spend $45,000 a month on marketing. Reverse engineer that. I'll tell you right now, most new patients around the country on Google are going to cost you about $250. So if that's the case, if we took that kind of rule of thumb for your area and you're like, Josh, I need another 10 new patients every month and my practice would really hit our goals, then I'm like, great, that's probably, $2,500 a month spending in Google. And so it's a $30,000 investment for the year, but think about what 10 extra patients per month are going to produce. These tools and formulas can be applied at scale. So I think just that Google formula, right? Whether you need 10 new patients or whether you need 100, that formula can scale. It can really be a valuable tool in your kit there for marketing. Increased conversion rate first. I was kind of talking about this, but industry average conversion rate with Google. So for a Google ad, for somebody to click on a Google ad and go to the website, it's about 7.5%. Studio 88, our websites, because they're story driven, they're psychologically meant to connect with patients, that average jumps up to 14.4%. And so again, like investing in that brand, you might be getting enough people to your website, they just might not be converting. And it might be helpful to go back and look at your digital analytics and go, well, how many people are coming to the website every month? And you get on, you're like, man, I've got 1,100 people, unique visitors coming to the website every month, but we're only getting like 4 calls. Then take a look and audit the site, audit the experience. How easy is it to contact? How easy is it to make an appointment? Are they connecting with you and your values? And then mindset, I would say, is probably the one key to take away from this. Is it's a whole different mindset to grow something this fast and to be this aggressive. And I will wrap this up with some kind of parting startup advice from Dr. Pappas.
If we had 3 or 4 startup docs here that were just on the precipice of that, what's your advice to somebody thinking about that?
You have to have thick skin. You got to understand that marketing is an investment. Okay, just like building your facility is.
Yeah.
You're going to have to put money into it. You're going to have losses for a little bit. You're going to have to sacrifice. You have to have patience with your team and the practice, but you have to market. You have to market. If you don't have patience, none of the rest of it matters. This isn't just like magically they just walk in the door, you hang a shingle. Like if you can't prioritize that with a chunk of money, whether it's from the bank or you save it in your associateship, then you probably shouldn't do the startup. if you can prioritize having a chunk of cash, we call it the war chest.
Yeah.
You can do a startup. And we did it, as practice 3.
Yeah.
So it was nice because we had 2 practices making us money. We had a war chest. We knew we were going in really, really hard.
Yeah.
I think docs need to be prepared. If you're doing a startup, start saving your money. Understand the bank will give you working capital, but they're not going to probably fund all of it. Get it ready so when you hit the ground, you have that marketing budget ready to go. Because the bigger the marketing budget, the quicker your practice goes to 2 million.
Guys, thanks for being around for this webinar for sure. If you want to get in touch with me, best 2 places. I'm over at Instagram at Joshua Scott. But you can also check us out at Studio 88 or SAE8.com, our website. Reach out to us. Tell me you heard this webinar. Just drop a quick hello in there. I'm still in my social media accounts. I will absolutely respond to you. But guys, it's been fun. I hope you walk away with a couple maybe insights, couple tools that just give you a little bit more control over your marketing at the end of the day.
Amazing job, Josh. I'm going to just share little things for people to get this recording. And I have a few questions. People can ask a few questions in the chat. Amazing share. And like most things, I like to make this all about me. So I want to share this moment that I am really good at shooting 3-point shots from well beyond NBA range. And I've done it my whole life, 37 years. So if I went out there and I showed off and knocked down NBA length threes, someone who just learned to play basketball could easily get intimidated, easily say, I can never do it. But I live a life of how can I do what I'm doing better, right? So what do you think that I know some of these awesome people listening in where they say, hey, this is an amazing story. You've outlined it. You've showed the stats. Like, what do you think they could take away from it? Whether they're in the early journey of their startups, thinking about a startup, whether it's spend more than you feel you want to on marketing. Give us a few hey, I'm just learning to shoot these 3-point shots like startups for a few takeaways from this.
Yeah.
Including other clients too.
I know we love working with startups. They're our favorite clients because it's like you're coming along somebody just has this dream, this vision of building something. And I think, I love business owners because it feels like we're actively participating in just creating something new in the world. Like this practice did not exist there before. And so you're creating this thing and it takes so much energy and so much vision and passion that for us to support them, we love that opportunity. I would say my biggest piece of advice to startups is for me personally, I'm get the brand right. Get the brand right. I was just at a conference last weekend full of startups, and I probably had this conversation with 5 of them because they're like, is it really that important? And I'm like, look, here's what's going to happen if you don't. You're going to try and save money, get a logo on 99 Designs or whatever, Fiverr. I'm not hating on that. I'm just saying you're just going to do something that's easy. Have somebody build a website for $1,500 or whatever. You're not going to like it. It's not going to tell your story. It's not going to represent you, but you're gonna be like, fine, we got something up. There's something up. Check the box. We're done. A couple years later, you're going to be like, I don't like this website. Let's redo it. So you hire somebody at maybe, $5,000 or something to do the site. But again, it's very processed, templated. It's not uniquely you. And you're like, oh, fine. I had to write the whole thing myself. I'm just frustrated. Let's just get it up and get it live. And then you come back to it maybe 3 years, 4 years after that. And finally, let's build something that is unique. That's us, that represents us. Here's my question to you. What do you think the opportunity costs were for that 10 years of patients not connecting with you authentically online? It's huge. And as a startup, I think we look at oh, it's so expensive. And I'm like, how much growth would you have had? Maybe an extra 4 new patients a month because of it. Paul, I think that's super conservative, but I'm like, that's 48 patients every year for 10 years. That's almost 500 patients that you never connected with because they couldn't do it. There was just nothing authentically about you online that would kind of reach out and go, hey, we're here for you. So
I love that share. I want to share for people listening, and you can text the word startup to 215-543-6454 to get this recording later. But Josh, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever seen this movie? Well, I'm guessing The Wizard of Oz. Have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So and I don't know if I want to give credit for this joke because have you ever seen Family Guy in your life?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I want to give credit to Family Guy because this is where this joke is coming from.
Okay.
So I'm Paul Goodman, and hold on one second here. And you said that startups were your favorite clients and you liked them the best. So it was a little bit like when Dorothy, when saying bye to everybody, said to the Scarecrow, I'm going to miss you most of all. And the lion was like, and the timber was like, you didn't have to say that in front of everyone. But even though you said it, I would like to bring up this website, which is my website that you guys did, Pennington Dental Center, and you did it. We were well beyond the startup age. We were an old, tired, exhausted practice. And we went to Studio 88. And I say this in a joking way. We did this about 2 years ago, I think. Is that about right? So we did about 2 years ago. So the reason why we did this website was not necessarily to get 1 million new patients, was not necessarily to grow by $500,000, but really to tell the story that we're proud of and have team members that might want to work with us here understand what we're doing. So if we just shift gears for a second, maybe my team will pull this out for us later. Working with existing practices. Can you work with existing practices? What was it like working with us? If you're an existing practice watching in saying, I've made those mistakes. I've done 4 different websites and 5 different marketers, but I'm ready to do what Paul and his brother did. Invest a lot of money, take a lot of time into a website that we're really proud of. Talk to us about that for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we work with so many just existing practices, and whether you're like you've done 2 websites, 3 websites, you're 10 years in, you're 20 years in, I think it's never too late to start this game. And it's really just putting that brand first, like realizing that patients want to connect with something, they want to connect with values. And Paul, you're 100% right. We always translate this type of stuff into new patients in the door. And I've got this new keynote. I'll have to do it for you sometime in your group, but I'm really trying to unlink those 2 things, marketing and new patients in the door, because it works, but it's very short-sighted and it's not the most accurate way to view it. You think about a site like this, what does it do for patients walking in for trust levels, for connection levels? What does it do to your case presentation when the patient's like, they tell you right from the start, like, I know I'm supposed to be here. Like, you're the right practice. And you're like, great, let me now present treatment. Like, it's a whole different thing. What does it do for like team morale and the mission and vision? What does it do for retention of patients and team member? What does it do for recruitment of team members? Like, there's so many benefits when you actually begin to leverage brand in your practice and in your business. That if all we're thinking about is, does it get new patients? Does it get butts in the chair? I'm like, fine. Yes, that's part of it. There's probably about 8 to 10 other benefits to actually doing something like this that's just going to make the whole practice just elevate.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite patients here. One of the things when we shoot with your teams, you get to bring your favorite patients, share your favorite stories. This is someone who's well above the age of 80, who's done multiple implants. She's given us all the HIPAA consent forms we need, so we will not get caught by the HIPAA police. But these things are fun. And for me, at my stage of my career, my brother, yes, we want new patients, but we want our existing patients to know we do this. We want a dental hygienist or dental front desk team member to see this and say, this is how we want to feel. So even though in the Dorothy Wizard of Oz, you shared that startups were your favorite, Josh, and I feel left out, I want to share in the kindest way. You have helped us feel better, have us feel something that we're proud of. And I think, I don't know if it's called, I didn't really think of this as a rebrand, but it was really sharing for the first time the story of our dental practice. And I think that our people watching in now and in the future should remember that no matter where you are in your journey, to stop and get the team and the patients that you want. And I think it's just I'm grateful that you existed to do that for us, Josh.
Oh man, Paul, you're always my favorite, bro. I should have said that earlier.
Yeah, it always has to be about me. Well, you shared so much awesomeness here. Just one more time before we go, if someone wants to reach out to you to find out about anything that you do, just for the recording, if people are watching or listening in, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, like I said, I'm on Instagram at Joshua Scott. That's probably the best way, easiest way. I'm still in my DMs. Just send me a message, say hi, even just tell me you heard this. But if not, go to www.s8e8.com. The letter S, the number 8, the letter E, the number 8.com. And there's all kinds of buttons there to just click and somebody will get right back to you.
Awesome. Thanks for supporting us, Josh, as a sponsor and friend. We truly appreciate it.
Always, man.